everybody, to Beyond Recovery. My name is Matt, and my guest today is Thomas White. So he is the co-founder of Exact Nature. The entire reason for Exact Nature is to be able to provide addicts and alcoholics with safe, healthy, effective supplements in their journey to sobriety. So Thomas, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
Good, Matt. Good to see you, and thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you bet.
Hey,
Great to see you, and thanks for coming on. Yeah, I've been
yeah,
excited to do this one. We had a little bit of back and forth. I was able to track you down on Instagram there, and
I
here we
couldn't
are.
hide.
Yes. So yeah, excellent. Great to have you on the program. Before we get into the exact nature and the story behind that, I would love to hear your story as far as your personal recovery journey and sobriety journey. So I would love to hear just your origins with drinking or whatever substances may have come up with in your life, and kind of walk us through that if you could.
Yes, I've been in recovery now for 13 years, a little over. Um, and while 13 years is notable, it should be about 25 years. You know how that goes. It took
Yes.
me a while to get into recovery and for it to stick and so forth. So, but when I grew up, it was looking back on it now, it was clear that I was an addict from the jump almost as soon as I was of age to certainly to start drinking. But even before that, I was experimenting. I was the first kid in my class to start smoking pot and things like that. So I was adventurous, and um, yeah, one thing led to another, and as you know, alcoholism and addiction is progressive. It just gets worse and worse over time, and so even when you're not drinking, it continues to progress. And so I got to the point I was slipping into darkness, and I was my alcoholism in particular was just really getting off the charts. I and I while I most often refer to my alcoholism, I am an addict across the board, and really always have been. And drugs were certainly a part of my past, and so on. In my later years, before I got sober, alcohol was really my downfall, because, as you know, alcohol is so readily available and socially acceptable that it just it for those of us that are prone to addiction and alcoholism, it just took over. And before I got sober, a few months before I got sober, my alcoholism was getting so bad that I would wake myself out of my sleep to drink more. I felt, and I was having this physical need for more alcohol, and it was awful. Uh, I got two DUIs. Neither I was not involved in an accident or anything of that sort, neither in either case. But and then the second time I got a DUI, it was time to really to go to rehab, and so I did go to rehab in a very good rehab facility in Palm Beach here in the States. Um, and I think the facility did what they were supposed to do. Even so, it took me better part of a year to get it. I relapsed probably 5 or 6 times in that year uh, following rehab, and my wife was very concerned about this, understandably. And what I said to her, uh, and in this time, I really meant it, or really uh, could point to some evidence behind it, that I was starting to get it. I was starting to learn how to live a few days and a few weeks at a time without drinking, and then eventually a few months, and so I was finding my footing, and that's where I'm at today. So now I've had really 13 years. In December it'll be 14 years
Nice.
of of complete sobriety. I not a drink of alcohol has crossed my lips since then, and so but it took a while. There's nothing easy about this.
That's incorrect. Congratulations on your, 13 and a half or closing in on 14.
Yeah, right.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah,
And the few things that come up right away is like the relapses. And when we talk about that, I like to get into that with whoever the guest is, as far as what was your mindset like when you have these relapses? Because I know for me, it was, there's a lot of, it's like you have a mistake and then I have a mistake and then I dogpile on myself. I'm like, yeah, you idiot. So it's like two
yeah.
in one. It's like this, and so it just makes it twice as hard. And then I realized later on, I'm like, okay, well, back off on that. There's a mistake, so let's work on the solution as opposed to just sitting there and you know double, getting on myself about it. How was it
Yeah.
for you? How are those relapses for you?
Um, well, what I had, because I had gone to rehab and because I was learning to string together a few days at a time, I realized that I was finding a way to live without alcohol and drugs. And so I was encouraged by that. I didn't beat myself up too much for those relapses because I took hope in my stringing together some periods of time after rehab. However, before I went to rehab, I was feeling hopeless and helpless and full of shame. I was just, I never slept under a bridge, but and I always managed to hold down good jobs, but I knew what was going on. Once I left work and what my life was like uh, beyond the workplace, and it was not pretty. I was slipping into a dark place, and so once I got to rehab, in spite of those relapses, I was finding encouragement in
Mm.
that. And uh, since then too, where I've attended a lot of AA meetings. I'm a fan of AA. I think it's a remarkable program. Um, and it's a program where you can kind of take the things that benefit you and leave the things that you're not as interested in. Like I think the spirituality or the God component of AA sometimes makes people reluctant to jump in with both feet, and uh, that is understandable for some people, that reluctance. But what I took away from AA and what I always like to think about it is, when I used to live in Washington D.C. and there was a television commercial that was playing on television on the airwaves at that time, and it was for a local bowling alley, and the tagline was, "When's the last time someone cheered for you?" And I always love that tagline, because when you're bowling, no one takes it too seriously, and when you do well, everybody's clapping for you and
Mm.
proud for you and so forth. And I feel like AA was kind of like that. That
Mm.
if people that in AA, as I'm sure you know, it's called going back out. You try to get sober and you go back out and have drinks or do drugs or whatever, you relapse. But in AA, they welcome you back with open arms, and I always loved that. That felt like that was a time where people were cheering for me. And now that I have some time under my belt, I understand why AA takes this approach that the newcomer is the most important person in the room. Those
Mm.
people are the most vulnerable. And I love that about AA, and always have. And so that's where I wasn't getting too down on myself at that point, because I was feeling encouraged by stringing together some time that up to that point I had never been able to do, never been able to accomplish that. So I was, in spite of it, I was feeling encouraged, and knew that I was going to get it at some point. And when I did get it, it just kind of came. I didn't. I just started to get it, and
Yeah.
I wasn't. I didn't do anything differently other than stay away from the drink and drug, of course. But I was, by the time in these 13 years that I've had now, I've every week and month and year and so forth, uh, have become more sure in my footing, and we never turn our backs on these things, because we're all susceptible and will always be susceptible. So But I do feel good about my recovery and my sobriety at this point.
That's great. That's a great place to be in. You
Yeah,
mentioned it's finding your footing. So it's and I love how you had the even back then you didn't get into the darkness too much. You had this hope mentality of, okay, well, I've been able to string this together for a few days, and you're focusing on that side of things versus what you might not be having, or like focusing
yeah,
on the negative side. So that's a
yeah,
great piece of advice, great
yeah.
piece of insight.
We'll talk about exact nature in a moment, but I have a customer who probably is, she's drinking too much, but it feels situational because she has an adult son who is struggling with opioid use disorder.
Mm,
And she is just afraid for him, understandably. Um, so what I try to say to her, and what I have said to her, is that her son had at one point shown 14 days of without any opioids, and then he got to 4 months, and then he relapsed. But I tried to still be positive and say to her that he's starting to get it. I know you can be discouraged that he's relapsing, but he's starting to get it. So take some comfort in that. Don't turn your back on it, because especially with opioids, what I always say about that is that alcoholism will kill you, and alcohol will kill you over time. Opioids will kill you overnight.
right. Yeah. No.
We in terms of exact nature, I founded this company with my son, who's 23 years old and is also in addiction recovery. And he had been to rehab programs, several as a teenager, and he was getting it. I don't know that he entirely found it until, um, 5 years ago in June. It was 5 years where he lost his very best friend in the world to
Mm,
an opioid overdose, and
wow.
that really scared him into sobriety, realizing how serious this is, and having such a close personal relationship with this friend he had now lost. He knew that it could happen to him if he was uh, continue to flirt with these kinds of dangerous drugs.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's quite the story. What is the dynamic like, or what was the dynamic like for yourself and your son? You just knowing that you've been through this, also knowing that change comes from within, no matter what you say to him, at some point he's going to have to come to terms with it. Did you feel that it was a benefit to you having the idea that you've been through your own recovery, so you're there to give him advice when needed? Or did you find that you had to pull back and go, hey, like I can tell you how to do this, but I know you have to. So what was that like? What was that interplay like between you and him in his
Right.
recovery?
Good question. Well, we know it's an inside job, right? We have to be committed to sobriety in order for it to take. Um, but having said that, I know what he's going through. The idea of, in my own life, for me to have gotten sober at 23 would have taken a level of commitment that I probably didn't have. I know, strike the word probably, I did not have at 23. I was enjoying the party life, and I became, I was never the life of the party, but certainly I became much more animated and much more just socially outgoing when I was drinking. um, and I knew I that was just kind of part of my mo in my 20s and into my 30s. So I try to balance what he has to be going through now with what I went through at the same age. And so I try to steer him. I'm never particularly heavy-handed about this, because it really has to come from within.
Mm.
And so he knows that, and I think he's done a very good job, and I'm very proud of him for the the path that he has found in sobriety.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we're going to get into the exact nature here right away. There was one last question I have for you as far as your own personal
Yeah.
recovery sobriety. So you mentioned AA. You started off with a stint in rehab and such. What are some of the other things that have been like foundationally important or pillars, if you will, of your own recovery? Like, is it, physical activity? Like, what other things have
Yes.
been made up that, that foundation for you to continue on for the coming on 14 years now?
Right. My passion, really from my 20s on, has been cycling, mountain
Mm,
biking, and then road cycling. But mountain biking for years. I mean, I was an avid mountain biker, and I sometimes, not sometimes, more often than I would care to admit, I did that with a buzz on.
mm,
And but I enjoyed it so much, and I was fearful that in sobriety I would not enjoy it as much.
right.
um, but I can tell you that was wasted thought, because I have enjoyed cycling and sobriety every bit as much, more so as in sobriety than I ever did, um, ever did while I was drinking. Only because even when you're mountain biking, you still have this hovering addiction, and I might have had some drinks before I went biking because it made everything more enjoyable at that point in my life. Um, but no, in sobriety, I enjoy it. I enjoy it more. But I never lost any of that. Also, I'm a big music buff. I go hear a lot of live music. And to this
Ooh,
day, I
nice.
I went to a show on Friday night. I'm going to another one on Wednesday night. I go to several shows a month, and
Oh, nice.
I've been a huge music buff since I was in before I could drive. And so I wondered, would I enjoy live music and seeing concerts and bands and so forth as much in sobriety? And also to that is, yes, I enjoyed every bit as much. And not only that, not only that, I can remember it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have any of the blackouts or some of the
Yeah.
things that I suffered in while I was actively in addiction.
Yeah, right. Are
So,
you
my life has gotten overall much better across the board. There's nothing that, there's no loss of enjoyment of life in sobriety. And I was filled with so much fear
Yeah.
before I got sober. I just thought, I used to think, you mean I can never drink again? And I think that is a common thought for those of us entering
Yeah. Yeah.
sobriety. And I at some point in my sobriety, my thinking switched, not intentionally, but it did switch, going from you mean I can never drink again to you mean I never have to drink again. And it just became my sobriety is comforting to me at this point.
Yeah, that's great. Very great. Well put. Very great advice as far as, and I love that too. It's like for me, there was a period of redefining. Like I'm a big camper and outdoor and hiking and such. The first time I went camping sober, it was a little too oddly peaceful for me because usually I
Yeah.
get out there and try and tear through a couple of cases of beer at record time and start a big fire, right, and be all rowdy. But and then I'm kind of sitting out there going, man, it's so peaceful and quiet. Like this is kind of boring. But then, very quickly my brain goes, no, the peace is nice. I like
Yeah.
this, right? And to your point, like I remember what I did last night, and
Right.
so yeah, no, great insight there. I love it. Well, let's
The
get back. Let's get
presence
it.
of mind comes back to,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
that we also talk about now being present. We are, because
Yeah.
we're not intoxicated.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, 100%, 100%. So about a year and a half in to Exact Nature, let's get the origin story of Exact Nature. When did CBD, come on your radar? When did you decide,
Yeah.
this is going to be a business, venture? Like, yeah, what's all the origins of Exact Nature, please?
Right. Right. Thanks. Because it's interesting in that I now live in Wells, Maine, in the States. But I had moved here back to Maine from Reno, Nevada, where I lived
Mm.
a little over 6 years. Our next door neighbor in Reno was the first CBD processor and hemp processor for CBD in the state of Nevada.
Oh.
So they run something called PNX Botanicals, which is now called Florishant. And because of them, I got to know CBD from their standpoint, and they were They were evangelists, as you would imagine, for CBD. And I first started talking to them about CBD and how it can help for mood. When I got sober and when my active addiction moved out, depression moved in. So for 10 years, I struggled with depression and I took prescription medication to manage that. And it worked until it didn't. And when it stopped working, I didn't want to go through that trial and error period once again of trying this and did it work and trying this for a few weeks and did it work there and so forth. So um, I decided to just stop my prescription medication and I have managed my depression with CBD entirely since then. So I was talking to my neighbors, the Perrys, at PNX Botanicals, now Florishans, about this. How does it help with it? And they were filled with stories about how it helps with mood and how it helps with depression. And they didn't know that I was in addiction recovery. So
Mm.
then I started pointing my questions towards that topic, and I said, well, given that it helps with this, does it help with people trying to get sober? Does it help with people that are trying to curtail their use of addictive substances? And boy, they just lit up and they said, yes, we have friends. They had friends that they had been giving their CBD to because they don't sell at the retail level. They sell uh, to retailers like me, e-commerce sites like me, like
Yeah.
Exhibit Nature, and they just lit up. And they had example after example of friends, well, three, where two friends in particular that were struggling with alcoholism, and they had given their CBD to, and it helped with their alcoholism, and one that was dealing with an opioid use disorder, and it helped
Mm.
him. And since
Wow.
then, so they certainly piqued my interest in CBD, how it can play a role in helping people get sober. I would never suggest that somebody take an exact nature capsule, a detox capsule, which is aimed at curbing addictive cravings. Take this and that it's going to cure them of their alcoholism. I would never suggest that.
Mm.
But what it can be is an effective tool in a toolbox, because CBD has shown through research that it can minimize visual cues and it can break that psychological bridge that we get from those visual cues that lead us to drink more. So with the Perrys and with their the insight that they provided, I did months of very intensive research about CBD and about how it has been used for um, these types of addiction issues. And I came to my own conclusion that yes, there is an important role that CBD can play. And knowing obviously that I have suffered from addiction, and that my young son is suffering from addiction also, he and I co-founded this company, Exact Nature. And so our focus is CBD products aimed at people with addiction issues. And
Mm.
so we take a very, very good premium CBD derived from hemp, and not from marijuana, derived from hemp, and uh, and created these products. And these products are proprietarily formulated. Our products are proprietarily formulated in the sense that we take this premium CBD, but we surround it with other natural ingredients that have long been used to fight these issues. The first one, we had a product called Detox. So detox, we use things like kudzu root, which has been used by the Chinese since 600 AD to help for exactly this reason, to help curb addictive cravings. And then detox, for instance, also has L-glutamine and L-tyrosine, which are amino acids that help promote calm, and they work through our neurotransmitters. And we use magnesium and things like that. Those are the ingredients that we use in our detox products. Then we have a line called Serenity, and Serenity is focused on mood really depression, anxiety, things like that. So the same kind of thing. We looked at serenity, and we came up with GABA, things that facilitate. It's also a gamma aminobutyric acid that helps with neurotransmission, things like that. And we talked with formulators and so on. So we knew we were headed down the right avenue. So I wanted to give these products their best chance of working. We don't focus on people that have, we're not offering CBD for tennis elbow or for your favorite pet. I think it
Yeah.
can help with those things, but our focus is really issues with addiction. So curbing the addictive cravings, uh, calm, mood, and focus. Uh, uh, and promoting better sleep. So same kind of thing. We offer a line called Z's, and all of these are offered in capsules, CBD oils, and drink powders.
That's excellent. And what would be the difference between, so, say, like a powder? Is it more so just like a preference of the way you ingest it? Is it just personal preference at that point, or is there like a difference in, the way that it's balanced? Say, for example, the powder to a capsule versus the drop under the tongue or whatnot.
They have slight variations on the formulations because some things are not as well accepted into oil as they
Mm,
would into a
sure.
capsule or drink powder form, but mostly it's preference. Mostly people think that oils get into the objective is get it into your bloodstream. So a lot of people think that the oils can get into your bloodstream a little more quickly. But I think the capsules are equally effective. It might just take a little bit longer. And with the oils, what I always offer the pro tip that if you can take these oils and you can kind of let it linger in your mouth, what we want it to do is enter your bloodstream through the mucous membranes in your mouth. That's the
Mm,
most effective way. So if you swallow it, no harm at all, because that's the way a lot of people ingest CBD gummies and so on. But it doesn't. But more of it gets into your bloodstream where we want it, and so it has a better chance of working if we can do that. So, but it's really a preference. I take all three, as you would imagine.
yeah.
We offer one other line called Boost. It's a coffee additive. I put it in my coffee in the morning, and then I will often have a water bottle full of with a drink powder that I sip on throughout the day, and then I'll take a Z's capsule at night, an hour before I go to sleep, go to bed.
So yeah, you have the boost, the detox, serenity, and then the zzz for sleeping. Is that like is that sort of, I know there's so much that can factor in as far as the amounts uh, used or by the user, by the addict or by the how much alcohol consumed leading in. Is it something you recommend as like a daily? Is there a daily dose, or is it something that people can do? Like every couple days, or again, is it so dependent and then on the person? And then if it is dependent on the person, how do they figure that out as far as the dosages and such?
Very good question. Um, Almost all of our dosage is around 25 milligrams of CBD.
Mm.
And all of that, certainly the detox capsules and the Serenity capsules and oils and detox oils as well, we recommend taking them twice a day. So you'll get
Mm.
about 50 milligrams of CBD into your system through 2 doses a day. We think that's a healthy amount. It's a good amount. It's enough in there that it can make a difference. Um, but it's not going to overwhelm anybody. And CBD has low rate of side effects in any case. And one thing that we've seen about so CBD is still, although it's gaining in popularity every day, what we will, in my estimation, I think a year or two from now, or sometime in the not too distant future, there's going to be a lot of research that says 100 milligrams a day is preferred,
Mm.
and we've seen studies that people have taken 1,500 milligrams a day with no substantial side effects. And certainly they looked at, did it impair driving in any sense? So no, it didn't.
Mm.
And and a lot of CBD has THC in it. by law in the States, we cannot have more than 0.3% CBD. So
Mm,
at best, it ought to contain a very low amount of, I said CBD, 0.3% THC. It has
THC.
to have a very low amount of THC. So that's a non-intoxicating amount, the 0.3%. But even so, we take out that remaining THC for our audience. So that renders our CBD products called they are called broad spectrum.
Mm,
So in the larger spectrum of CBD products, you have CBD isolate, which is just CBD, and then you have full spectrum CBD, which is CBD and the other 113 cannabinoids and flavonoids and terpenes and things that go in it. So ours is almost full spectrum, but we take out the THC, so it's called broad spectrum. So, but it still allows you to take in the other cannabinoids and the flavonoids and terpenes that are in CBD and the hemp-based CBD, because um, it it is believed that these other cannabinoids, along with the CBD and terpenes and flavonoids, create something called an entourage effect. And that
mm.
entourage effect is where these other natural ingredients react in very positive, synergistic ways with your body. So for instance, CBD isolate, I'm not a fan of CBD isolate because I think you remove that possibility that you can have these positive interactions with these other cannabinoids and so on. I'm not a fan of that as our, it, most CBD providers like Exact Nature, we either full spectrum or broad spectrum. So, and again, for us, I don't want to give THC to our customers. So,
Sure.
it's not that I'm so against it, because I'm not. I think it can have some benefit, but some for people that haven't taken THC, it can speed them up a little bit, or it can have a little bit of a reaction. I don't want to. I want to remove that
Just
possibility.
exactly. No, that totally makes sense. That makes sense. Now, as far as some of the like side effects, if you will, might not be the right term for it, but you mentioned if nothing else, the effect that it has on the user or the person that has ingested the CBD. You mentioned it sort of it takes away some of the visual cues, for example, that may spark a potential
Right.
craving, right? What are some of the other things? Like, does it? How do you describe it as far as do you become calmer? You know what I mean? Like, do you feel how do you feel differently after taking it, or is it fairly fairly low key? It's sort of just running in the background. Like, how what are your experiences with it, and what have some of your customers been saying about it?
Yeah, well, what it does in the best case, certainly with detox, it helps minimize those visual cues and so on. But it also helps kind of lighten the load. It makes you
Mm,
feel lighter. It not
yeah,
in an intoxicating way. It just kind of makes you uh, better able. Your mood is improved. It helps you focus a little better. Those kinds of things. So the positive reactions are those kinds of things. Z's will help you sleep, and detox will help minimize the visual cues, and it will help curb those addictive cravings. Serenity helps with mood and focus in a large way as well. The if there are negative side effects, so we have been in business for a year and a half. We only sell in the U.S., but we've sold to customers in every state. And in a year and a half, and we offer a money back guarantee.
mm,
In a year and a half, we've only had one customer ask for her money back. And it's because it caused, in her words, mild diarrhea. And I read about that too. And it's so that can be a side effect, is mild diarrhea. Also, if people are taking prescription drugs, it's a good thing to check with your doctor
mm,
before
yeah,
taking. What I've read most is that it can react with blood thinners. So
yeah.
not in any. I've never read that it certainly was in any kind of real put anybody in danger or anything like that. But it's something that you should look into before taking CBD if you're on blood thinners.
Yeah, great advice. No, that's good to clear up.
But
As
can I go back to
yeah,
a point you made, or a question you posed earlier is, do you take it every few days, or what? How do you do this?
Yeah.
Um, CBD works best over time with consistent use. So what I
Mm.
always tell customers, if it's not working in the first week, you got to give it a little bit of time. Give it a full 30 days to see if it's going to work for you. Um, because but you have to take it consistently. When I've heard from people, they said, mostly friends that I have given my product to, say, I took it last week and took it a couple of days, and I took it, the next week or so on. So they were taking it sporadically, and I just explained that it won't work as well. You actually might sleep better, and even that first night from taking it, the first few nights, but you're not going to sustain that better sleep unless you can use it consistently. Because what you want to do is you want to build up the CBD in your system.
Mm.
Just very briefly, how this works is we have in our bodies something called the endocannabinoid system. It's a system of neurotransmitters that runs from our brain throughout our body. Uh, that can get depleted over time. So what you're doing when you're taking CBD is you're replenishing the cannabinoids that are naturally found in your body.
Mm.
So it's just replenishing it and putting you back to equilibrium. So you're not adding on as much as replenishing a system that can just get depleted over time, just
Mm.
natural course of life. So
Yeah, sure.
perhaps as an alcoholic, my endocannabinoid system probably got depleted quicker than others because of the abuse I put my body through.
Yeah.
Um, but and so what you do is you're just trying to replenish
So
that.
yeah, exactly. Okay, no, that's really good insight as well. That's great. Oh, one question specifically about the sleep stuff. Like I've tried melatonin before, which I find in for the actual quality of sleep is great, but I very groggy getting up.
Right.
Is that the case with this? Does it make you? Is there any morning grogginess or issues getting up from this stuff because you have such a great otherwise sleep? What is the is there a
Yeah,
trade off there?
uh, you do not feel groggy in the morning. You don't have to shake off the cobwebs in the
Mm,
morning. Although having said that, our capsules do contain a little bit of melatonin in them. They also have valerian root, which is helpful for sleep. They also contain um, melatonin, valerian. They also have matcha green tea in it, so that we
mm,
take the CBD, which really relaxes your mind and prepares you for sleep, and then we add little amounts of melatonin and these other valerian root and green matcha tea in there to kind of help with the sedative effect of it, but
yeah.
never. And I take it every night, so it just never. You don't have that kind of. You don't have to shake yourself out of it in the morning. It does not
That's
have
good.
that effect. And
Good to know.
I've never heard from a customer that they've had that effect.
Okay.
And having said that, um, it's not part of the reason you don't have to shake off that grogginess is because it's not. It kind of prepares you for sleep and prepares your mind, calms your mind, prepares you to rest. Um, Versus a sleeping pill or an Advil PM or something like that, it's a much stronger approach to sleep. So with that, CBD won't necessarily zonk you out every night, so it will allow you to sleep better. But if you have times of very high stress or something of note is really particularly on your mind, it's still going to. What I find with me is it still helps me get to sleep, but it's not going to make me catatonic. It's not going to knock me out. So sometimes my sleep, I don't have a perfect night of sleep every night, but that's okay. That's the trade off you kind of have to accept um, by not having that grogginess in the morning.
Yeah, for sure. I would much rather have exactly what you just described as opposed to that kind of because I love the mornings and the times that
Right.
I do have to kind of shake off the cobwebs. It feels, you know, feels not as good. I like to be able to just let's go, let's do this. I
Right,
love my mornings, so yeah, that was sort of a personal question on my side. You
right.
know, yeah, and just I think anybody is. I guess first question. You ship within United States, so this is great for the listeners down in the United States. Any plans to expand, or is it just going to be the states for now and kind of see how things go?
Uh, we're letting it all, even in the States, the laws are kind of still settling.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
the FDA, this is a case where the FDA, while they haven't endorsed CBD, they have tacitly endorsed it in the sense that they've continued to allow us to sell CBD. And
Mm.
the reason is because the practical uses and the anecdotal information that we've garnered from the so many millions of people using CBD at that point is that it's not addictive. It doesn't have a tremendous number of side effects. There's not a dangerous component to it, and people are experiencing a lot of very positives from taking it. So the FDA has said uh, that they're not going to be heavy-handed on this, and they haven't been. And in fact, the FDA has recently approved for clinical use a CBD product to help with opioid use disorder. So they
Wow.
have endorsed it in so much as now they have endorsed this clinical use of trial use of
Yeah.
CBD for opioid use disorders. And I'll tell you, the uh, the amount of deaths in the U.S. and across the world, certainly in the U.S., they're higher than they have been ever.
Mm.
And this, opioids in particular are just um, is just so dangerous that they are willing to allow this clinical use for this all natural product.
Yeah, that's the great news, and yeah, I could see as it'll unfold as as the years progress, and you already have you've mentioned a few different things. You have speculation or educated guesses as far as where this is headed, so that's great. If nothing else, I mean, for me living up here in Canada, it's been a great eye-opening experience just talking to you about this, the CBD specifically to recovery and sobriety. So I thank you for coming on the show. I'm sure
Yeah,
the listeners around the world, they're going to be able to find, similar products, or at least have a much more of a knowledge over some of these, the questions they might have had over CBD. So Thomas, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Where can we
yeah.
find you? Where we'll have it all in the show notes, but I'll give you a chance to. Where are you easily accessible online?
We are at exactnature.com. And Matt, I also would like to provide your audience a 20% discount.
Oh wow.
So if your audience, when they come to exactnature.com and in the checkout, when it prompts you to put a discount code in there, if they write capital letters BR20, Beyond Recovery 20, they will receive a 20% discount for their entire order. And I'll honor that throughout 2022. So
Wow.
it'll be available to them throughout the year. Well, let me mention one other thing about
Please
Exact
do.
Nature. Um, so we've talked about AA, and there are the 12 steps of recovery for AA. Well, our name is derived from the fifth step of AA, where we admitted to ourselves, to God, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. It's
Oh,
called
cool. I didn't.
so
Yeah,
yes, it's
didn't
easy
clue in.
to,
Yeah.
yes. So it's called the confession step. So we wanted to tie our brand and what we do directly to helping people. Um, Certainly, if they are in addiction situations, help them. But a lot of people just want to drink less or to do fewer drugs, those kinds of things. They just want to minimize their use, and so we help. We're there to help those people. Anybody that wants to curtail their use of potentially addictive substances, we're there for them.
Thomas, that's amazing, and pass on my best to your son as well. It's a
Thank you.
great
Good.
tandem there, you and your son. A wonderful story. I love that about I'm really glad you told us as to why exact nature where that came from. I would
Yes.
have heard that and still not clued in on it. So I'm really glad that
Right.
you that you
Right. It's
isolate.
easy to miss.
Very cool idea. So thank you so much for coming on, Thomas.
And that's been my pleasure. It's really, and I thank you for the good work that you're doing, because you'd asked me earlier about what are these things I do to help with my sobriety, and certainly, well, we all have to just abstain, right? We have to stop our drinking and drugging,
Yes.
but also podcasts like Beyond Recovery are such you're doing such important work,
Thank you.
uh, because exact nature, yes, we can help, but it has to be part of a multi dimensional approach to getting sober. And I think uh, recovery related podcasts are very important with that, as are AA meetings and NA meetings and things like that. So I thank you for the good work and important
Oh,
work you're doing.
I appreciate that. And that was one of the themes of what we were talking about earlier, right? It's not just an AA. It's like it's AA. You got this rehab. You got the podcast. You got your community. You have exact nature. There's you for cycling. There's all. It's this mural, this collage of things that really help us through this
Right,
recovery journey, isn't it?
right, sure
So
is.
excellent. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon, eh?
Okay, Matt, thank you.